Good evening, and welcome to another episode of Unstoppable Overcomers. And I'm your host, Dorothy Odell. I have the great pleasure of bringing to the stage Victoria Rubio. Welcome to the show, Victoria.
Hey Dorothy, thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So, for those of you that have never watched the show, this is just simply a conversation that we have between two people about things that they've overcome. And Victoria is such an amazing lady and has overcome so much. As a matter of fact, you know, we could overcome one thing and then we thought, well, wait, no, there's more. So let's unpack your story, Victoria. First of all, tell us a little bit about who you are, what you do, and then we'll go into your overcoming story.
All right. So presently, I am a social worker. That's my profession, I guess you would say. Well, my career is in social work, but I am a business owner in Windsor, Ontario. I own VR Success Services, which is a um, business and career advancement agency. We do professional services for anybody who wants to advance their career or business. Personally, I also have a personal professional brand, which is Victoria Rubio. And what I do with that, which has shifted a little bit, is I help people with their, success stories. So like how to be successful on their terms, and I share a lot about things that I've been through and how I haven't let certain things hold me back that maybe statistically speaking should have, so I use my story to empower other people to hopefully so they can reach their highest potential. I'm a mom, a single mom of seven, ages almost three. She'll be three next week, 3 to 24. So
Oh my
there's,
gosh.
you
That in itself is a full
know,
time career.
yeah. Yeah, and I'm just really passionate about helping others and mental health and um, just helping people realize that bad times don't last, even if they feel like they're going to last forever. Like they don't last. So,
Exactly. I tend to think of them as seasons. We all go through a season and then we get out of that season. Things are great, and then we go into another season.
yeah,
And well, that's from experience for me lately, anyways. You know, but okay. So a little bit about your overcoming story. You're one of like PTSD, mental health, and things like that because you're a great advocate for helping others with that. So
yeah.
let's go to your overcoming story. Tell us a little bit about that.
I mean, my overcoming story began probably when I was a baby. um, I've actually researched this regarding, trauma in the womb and things like that because I should have said this earlier, but previously, before becoming a social worker, I was a childbirth assistant, and I was super passionate about learning all about what happens in the womb and things like that. But anyway, I was born premature. I was getting a death sentence at birth. They said I'm not going to live, and um, so from what I'm told, um, they said I had severe meningitis or something like that, and I was in an incubator forever. And I mean, I don't know exactly how long I was in there, but I mean, I'm just telling you like from what. So okay, but obviously I'm here, right? So I that was but this was in El Salvador, and at the time there was like war going on there.
Hmm.
So we had to leave there when I was 3 years old. Now I think that from everything I've researched, especially being a social worker and just me being, that's just how my brain thinks, like research everything. That's where like my severe fear and anxiety really began without realizing it as a child. Like those are your formative years, right? So,
Right.
um, oh, were you gonna say something?
No, I was just gonna say, I think we go sub. It's I think it's subconscious. A lot of our fears, right? And
Yeah,
we don't know what we don't know. And I've
yeah,
heard from, I have a holistic doctor, Dr. Christie, who says, she the first thing she asked of me, how was your mom's pregnancy? Because it can start back then, and I didn't even know that. So, like you're saying, that's
it
just
can,
incredible.
and it does, but it's something that we don't realize, and sometimes you don't even realize how much it affects you. That's when your brain is being formed. That's when and you can hear things,
Hmm.
even if you don't understand them like we do. But this is all stuff that's shaping us. But even after the fact, that whatever happens during birth, like this is. it becomes a part of your DNA, how you perceive the rest of your life. But I'm just kind of giving you my story a little bit. There's
Yeah.
more, but I'm just, let's start there. So then, you know, the war, I don't really remember, but I remember. Like it's hard to say
Hmm.
because I remember feeling the panicky feeling when I knew that something was happening, but I don't remember the vision of it. It's hard
Right.
to explain, right? So it's like I know it's there somewhere, right? Um, we had to leave there. We left there when I was 3 years old. The thing that I remember, I think, the most that really ended up shaping me after that was my dad. He was an alcoholic, but he was like a severe alcoholic, but he was like Jekyll and Hyde. So he was my favorite person in the whole wide world, and he was super intelligent, and he was a teacher, and he um, he was bilingual, and he taught me so many things, and he taught me how to read when I was little. So like this, he was just this great guy. But when he drank, he turned into a monster that I feared more than anything. So it was like he was this great guy, and then he was this guy I feared the most. So, and that I remember very well, even now. Like all of those visions that are still in my brain, and
Right.
like I would see him covered in blood, or I would see, things that would happen, or I would like it's, and then he wouldn't remember the next day, right? So, and
And
these
that
are
would
things
have
that
an effect on your relationships too with men, I would assert.
I, I absolutely think that it did. Absolutely, but I think where I'm at now, I've put these pieces together. So I love exploring, going back in my past and being like, this just makes all the sense in the world, and I'm so peaceful about it now where I can talk about all these things. But um that like experience for my whole life, basically, when I was, not my whole life, but when I was growing up in my home, was like that, throughout my entire childhood. And so yes, it was really strange. And then that was just one thing, but the fact that we almost had to pretend like everything was okay,
Right.
and then this was just a pattern, right? So something happened, and then it was horrible, and then the next day we're like, okay, let's go have ice cream or something, right? Like it was, we're like, oh, okay, and then that was just a pattern, and that's what we became accustomed to. And then at school, I think I made up for everything that was happening at home. I was like an excellent student, like almost like too excellent, like it was like too much.
Right.
um, and I think that's where my zone was. Like I could get away from my home, right? It was at
Right.
school. Um, but I really do think it affected everything, all my choices, my decisions, but also definitely prevented, I think, from catching certain things that I learned about myself later on, because the attention was all on the problems,
Right.
right? And so the attention wasn't on our needs; it was on what was going on, right? That
Right.
was bigger than that. That was the thing our whole entire life, right? Not um, what necessarily each one of us may have needed. And I don't blame anybody. This is just how what it was, right?
Right.
But because of that, I could see that certain things. I'm like, I wonder if I would have maybe I should have been in counseling. You know what I mean? I should
Right.
have been addressing everything that had been happening since I was a child. All of these things should have been, because they followed me.
Right.
And it wasn't until about a couple of years ago, maybe 3 years ago, that I actually purposely started to unpack it all, right? And actually say, yes, this has been something that has affected me my entire life. Because from there, my choices, I feel like I've always lived this like dichotomy. I'm extremely focused when it comes to excelling, on certain things,
Hmm.
school, work, business. Like these are things that I've always done. But then there's been this, other side. It's like that I never really understood why it was like that. Even when I was younger, like I got into drinking pretty young. I can't even, when I look at my kids, my older ones, younger ones, like they don't drink. That's not like what they consider fun.
Mhm.
Um, I can't even imagine them, you know, being drinking at like 15 or whatever, like things that we thought, or smoking cigarettes. I mean, but back then that was normal. But um,
And well, I think we grab onto those addictions, like you said, to cope with the traumas, right? And it's funny because growing up, like life was chaotic, but I thought that was normal, right? And chaotic meaning that I had parents that were ill all the time. Great parents, but I never knew from one moment to the next if they were going to be healthy or not. And like you said, you growing up not knowing, what was going to happen with your dad, and especially if he'd been drinking and things like that. And I don't think that I know my parents certainly never thought about therapy or anything or anything. So, and it was on me when I became. I think for the last 10 years I've been working on that, like getting the therapy that I needed for that, and you know stuff like that. And I our parents didn't grow up with that, so I'm sure that that's why they never got us into counseling or anything like that. So good for you though for deciding that that's something that you wanted to pursue.
yeah, I mean, I think honestly, I can tell you just even from everything I know, and this started when I became a social worker too, and I started really like seeing um, what like the profession does for people. But I think everybody should be in counseling. I don't think there's like one
Amen.
person that doesn't have something that they need help with. And I
Yeah.
feel like I think that's one of the biggest, I guess, failures of our society, that we make this be so like, there's the normal people and then
Mhm.
there's the people that need help. No, it's probably the other way around. There's probably more people that need support, and that don't get it because of the stigma, or they think, oh well,
Yeah.
there's nothing wrong with me. No,
Yeah.
it's no, there's everything right with you, and this is why, maybe this is something that you could bring out, because it never goes away.
Yeah.
Like, this was one thing I remember, when I was actively working with youth, especially. um, I try to explain to them as files. I said, these are, whatever you think, like, even if you don't think it's bothering you, it's
Mhm.
in there. There's a file in there in your brain,
Yeah.
and maybe we need to take them out one at a time, read them, let's see what's there, because one day, if you don't, they're going to explode all over your brain. You're not going to know what the hell's happening. And I think that's what ended up happening with me when I
Mhm.
started really looking into um, the things that I never dealt with and the symptoms that I was experiencing, and putting names to them. And I'm like, okay, so this is an actual thing. It's not just how I think.
Yeah.
It's a thing, right? And because sometimes I would think, like, I wonder how people, you know, just I wonder how the people do it. You know,
Yeah.
why is this easy for them, but it
Yeah.
seems so hard for me, right? Like,
Yeah.
why, if I look at, I'll give you an example. If I would look at somebody's house with kids, and I mean, I know not everybody's house looks like a magazine, but and then if my children made a mess and my entire freaking house is a disaster, I would sometimes feel like, why is this so overwhelming? Like, because it almost gave me like anxiety to see it and to feel it, and it just kind of like shut me down,
Yeah.
But I'm like, why is this overwhelming for me and not other people? And this is just like a very small small example, but all of these little pieces together, um, I kind of started really paying attention to. Um, I mean, I've always been kind of like a thinker and digger, but I don't think I ever really put it all together. Whereas, oh, this created something that I never dealt with. And because of that, it catapulted into other things,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
So, um, PTSD, I believe, came from when I was very, very, very young, probably like 3 years old. And um, it just stayed. And I can look back now and see, well, not stayed, it's like a thing that put, but you know what I mean? Like, it's
Yeah.
something that I can recognize from then, and I can look back and see that I've always had those signs and symptoms, but I just didn't know what they were. And the fact that I never talked to anybody about it, and I just kept it within me. Um, I think it just made it hard. Like it made it really difficult.
Hello, how are you?
I'm in the show and nobody told me you're coming.
Oh, he said
No.
we're doing inspection. He won't be. I steal 5 minutes.
Well, we're in a live show.
Oh,
And this is what happens when we have live, when we do live,
No,
because
I don't
it's
understand why they wouldn't tell me. Are you able to edit this?
um I try and find a way to edit it. I can't stop it because then it will stop everything. Um,
Sorry.
that's okay.
I had no
Anyway,
idea anybody was coming in here. Like I honestly so upset. Um Apparently it's an inspection that nobody told me was happening. So
and that's okay. Don't add to your stress of the day. And I get it. And when you were talking about that, let's just back up for a couple minutes when you were saying that everybody that perceives like we have an issue and other people don't, and we want to glamorize what they have. But the thing of it is we have no idea what really is truly going on in their house, and 9 times out of 10 the people that don't talk about it are the ones that truly need help the most. And so you're right, bringing these topics to the forefront of mental health and things like that, we're allowing people to be themselves and allowing people to give the platform to say, hey, I'm not the only one that has gone through this. So yeah, that I wanted to address that because to me that's important, because so many people can say that, oh, they don't have any problems, but they're suffering in silence. So and so great for you for coming on today and sharing your show, sharing your story on the show so that people can say, hey, I can identify with that.
yeah, I really feel that it's it's something that I feel like almost everybody deals with. I don't think anybody has had a perfect life. I don't care, but some people have more obviously obvious traumas than others.
Yes.
And I think we're doing a little bit better with, talking about mental health and addressing mental health and things like that. But it's not enough because I feel that it's still so like a box over here instead of saying this is part of your entire being. And it's not just over here. Like, yeah, it's a part of you, but it's a part that basically controls your entire life.
Hmm.
If we're not addressing the things that have affected us in, whether it was our youth or um, our teenage years or even our adulthood, things that come up, nothing is going to feel like right inside,
Right.
right? And for me, I feel like that's kind of what started to happen. Where I would have, I mean, I was up and down. That's life, right? But no, it actually started to take over when I finally said, I need to be purposeful and say, okay, I'm going to address everything that I haven't addressed. I'm still in the process of that. I mean, it's a long life, right? But
It's a lifelong journey, my friend.
yeah,
Like and
yeah,
we unpacked it. When we unpack one thing, it's like I always say healing's like an onion. Once you get past one layer, then another one appears, another one appears. Until we go home, like then we're always gonna be working on that. I truly
yeah,
believe that.
yeah. It is. It's definitely a lifelong journey, but it's becomes a lot more purposeful when you address things, when you unpack things, when you realize, okay, this is what came of that as well. Like I'm huge on addressing, not only addressing, but also seeing who did I become through that experience,
Mhm.
because it really taught me a lot about even alcoholism. I grew up very angry at my dad, um, and I started to kind of just let that go before he died. Um, but I think because it's been almost 12 years now that he's been gone, and I really, really, I think developed more of like a huge understanding, and I think that's why I have a lot more of I don't even know what it, like empathy for people who are dealing with addiction, and seeing, firsthand, like I know what it is like to love somebody that has an addiction and recognize them for the amazing person that they are, but also see what it does to them and their family. And also from my end as a daughter, seeing how traumatic it is, and how much it really does affect your life for the rest of your life. It's not something that you can just walk away from when you leave the home. Like it's becomes part of who you are. And I really struggled with that, for years and years and years and years. I had panic and anxiety, and I didn't know what it was. I didn't know what it was. And seeing my dad be so addicted to, because he got addicted to prescription medication as well. I hated the pharmaceutical industry because of that. So I refused, for when I first started experiencing my first onset of panic attacks was, I think I was 25. Actually, no, I was like 19. And back then they weren't often. And I was able to just kind of, I learned meditation, and, just kind of go within myself. And that's how I got really educated on herbs and homeopathy, and things like that. And I think I was able to do a lot of self-help. But fast forward, my life was pretty chaotic. It was I did my absolute best to keep a very peaceful environment, and home. um, I was married very young too. I was married at 19, which is super young. I look at my daughters now, or my kid, and I'm like, I cannot even see them being married at all at this age. Like, like what was I doing married at 19? You
And
know?
that's the great part. Like you said, your oldest is in their 20s and your youngest is 3. So your first trauma that you remember is at age 3, which is your youngest daughter's age. So, helping them realize, you know, that this is where you were, and identifying. And I'm sure that if they had come across any traumas in their life, you would be the first one to say, nope, we're you're gonna go seek counseling or something. Right. And so seeing your kids at that age, your oldest could have been married by now and your youngest could have been in her first trauma. But that's what's so great about us going through this. We can stop that cycle for our children,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah. We can stop it. We can help it, and we can do something to address it. And things that maybe I saw, like I told you, that weren't done when I was a child, that I feel could have really helped me. I'm definitely, doing that with them. The younger ones. So the like just the whole dynamic of me wanting to do my best not to introduce the those traumas or the things that I saw in my home. I think that because of everything that I went through, and things that I dealt with, though, one thing I can say how it affected me is I lived in my head way too much,
Yeah.
and I never talked. So because I never talked about it, I just never talked about it. I never really addressed my problems. So
Right.
addressing my problems wasn't a normal thing that we all talk about, right? So,
Right.
but that's just, and that I have come to definitely learn that it is a trait of growing up in an alcoholic home. You don't talk about these things because it's just what happens in your house, and you the rest of the world you're fine, right? So we learn to shut things off really quickly, but you don't really shut them off. You just live in your head with them
Exactly.
24/7. um but I think because I lived in my head so much, it prevented me to from being as present,
Yeah.
because I had so much going on inside.
Right.
And that's something that I'm being mindful of now, that I'm like, wow, I really have lived in my head for a long time, like just not being as present as I should have been because of it. Right. But now, the more I talk about things, the more I let out my story, the more stories that I've gotten from even all my clients, and then sharing, with them,
Yeah.
it has really helped me to not be as much up only up here.
Right.
Being out here is actually so much better.
Right. Do you meditate too? Do you use that as a form of self therapy, I guess, or I because I'm only asking because I use meditation to help me get out of my head. Our stories are a little bit similar in the fact that I lived in my head for decades, and not really verbalizing to my parents what was going on at school. You
Mhm.
know, kids can be cruel. I never went home and told my parents. I never told my parents when I was in my abusive relationship what was going on in that house. I kept everything to myself
Yep.
because I wanted to protect my parents because that's what I did. I'm a protector. So I lived inside of my head for decades until I was ready to crack. Um, right. And then, um, so yeah, like, can tell us about your journey with that.
I feel okay. So the meditation, yes. So I learned how to meditate, but I can tell you that because I love meditation. Okay, so I'm just gonna tell you, I'm not sure if it's gonna make sense, but because at the time, like I just recently found out that I not found out, but got an official, you know, reassurance that what I knew for a long time was right. Like I was dealing with ADHD in my head, PTSD, ADHD, anxiety, right? So when I would try to meditate, all of these all of these trains and
I
thoughts
get
and
it.
so I'm
Yes.
like, okay, let's get on one. One of the best things I learned, I went to my meditation groups because I used to go to meditation groups, was just get on one of the trains, never mind the other trains. Get on one. There's going to be lots of trains, but I felt like my trains were jumping on the other trains. You know what I mean? There were just like so much going on in my head.
Right.
I think one of the best things that helped me when I started to try to deal with my when everything catapulted into panic attacks, which we'll talk about next, was really short breathing meditations.
Mhm.
So like the 3 minute breathing meditations that I could do in the car, that I didn't have to lay down for, or that I didn't have to, or square breathing, right? Or like those short ones. I still use those all the time. Sometimes, like especially if I'm starting to get, I feel upset, even angry, and it's actually really good to do before you even say a word when you want to argue with somebody or anything like that. Like it helps ground you. So
Mhm.
I do really love meditation. I'm just telling you that initially I felt like it wasn't for me because my brain was too active and it wouldn't shut down. Now
Yep.
I know why. And it's always been like that my whole life. I've always lived in my head. But I feel like validated now that, okay, it makes sense why. It makes sense why there's 3 million windows open and not four, right? So,
I
yeah.
love that you said that. Because I too had that experience, and somebody had shared with me like a guided meditation, or there's I forget what there's a tape she gave me where I listened to that, and it centers my mind to like one thing, and then I can just focus on my clear path with
Yeah.
God. So yeah,
Yeah. Um,
get that.
gratitude really helps me too. Um, I find myself, and we could totally talk about this too, but I find myself, it's like a way that I can bring myself back to here now, because another characteristic of everything I'm talking about is dooms thinking. Like it takes you to the potential worst possible scenario that could happen, or you know,
Mhm.
or you get too so worried about a situation that you can't see any solutions. It's just so worried, and then you start living as if the outcome that you're creating in your head already happened, and
Mhm.
that's so stressful, right? So I always, okay, stop it. Let's think of something you're grateful for. What are you grateful for? And I try to consciously, like, really be like, wow, I'm really grateful for this. Yes, this is. It always brings me back to my zone where I can start to just really either come up with solutions or just like let it be. Right? Nothing lasts.
Right.
Um, but you know what? It ended up where my pivotal moment when I said I need to get help with all of this, because I've been, it affected my relationships. It really did. I also felt that I had this thing that I just wanted to help people that were similar to my dad. Um, not going to happen. Like, it's just not. Like, it's something that has to come from within. I can't do anything about that, right? So now at the time I didn't realize this, right? This was just, but I'm like, yeah, okay, that makes sense now too.
Right.
But it affected my choices, the choices that I made, affected the decisions I made, affected the things that I was attracted to, um, things that I feared, you know, things that I pursued. I think in some ways it was a good thing. I feel like I go after things that I want, and
Hmm.
I usually do very well at them. But in other things, I've gone after things that I want, and it's not been so, but not been so. Relationships probably being one of them, right? So
Yeah.
um, I decided, when my last relationship ended, I was like, I'm taking, and this is with my younger girl's father was like, I'm done. I'm taking a break from that. I'm not even interested because this is taking away too much focus on what I need to be focusing on, which is all of this that I'm talking to you about today.
Right.
And it was probably the best thing I did because um, I finally did something about it. Like, I finally addressed it. I was finally able to get help. I was finally able to start um, moving forward. I was finally able to feel it inside that there's actually a difference,
Right.
right? And that is golden because nobody would have ever even known any of this because honestly, from the outside, people just were always telling me, wow, like you're just superwoman, you're amazing, like you do it all. No, 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 no. I'm like,
Mhm.
yeah, but but it's heavy and
At
it's
what
hard,
expense?
you know?
Right.
Yeah, and it's just it's not it's not anything anybody could see. And that's the thing, with what we deal with, especially women, any type of neurodivergence. I think we are amazing at masking, and this I learned from my sister, who's was telling me, this girls and women, like they mask so well because that's what we're taught, right?
Yeah.
And we're like, okay, we're gonna fit in here. This is what we're gonna do. This is who we're gonna be.
Yeah.
That's how it is, right? And I mean, I guess in some way, shape, or form, I've done that throughout my whole life. So nobody would have any idea that any of this was going on unless I said it, right? Or unless they experienced it with me or saw me. Um, but all of this turned to some pretty scary symptoms for me. And that's when I was like, I can't, I've had enough.
Yeah.
Um, so I've had, like I said, I told you, I had a couple panic attacks when I was younger. They went away. I did meditation and I did all this stuff. But again, maybe masking as well. Um, but about 3 years ago, after I had my daughter, I had a really bad panic attack that scared me, and it came out of nowhere. It's not like I wasn't. When I say I've had anxiety, it's not something that I walked around with. Um, it's more of like it would just come over out of nowhere, right? And I'd be like, I don't know where it's coming from. What am I anxious about? What am I worried? Like I would kind of have to dig to even ask myself what is going on. Why are you feeling this way? It wasn't obvious. Like, oh, this is why we're anxious, right? So the panic attacks came on just like that, where
Mhm.
they were sudden, out of nowhere, extremely scary. They mimicked like heart attacks, and I didn't know. I was like, should I call an ambulance or is this just, am I just anxious? Like that's how
Right.
bad and scary they got. Right. So,
Right.
um, first couple times was like, okay, like this is scary, and I went back to my naturopathic doctor. She gave me like magnesium or something. And, but a year later, they started coming on so often that I just couldn't ignore it anymore. And I tell in my clips in my page, I was like, I feel like my body was telling me you can't ignore this anymore. Like this is it.
Wow.
Like you are done. we It has to come out. Like
Yeah.
there's nothing that you can. You're not. The files they're on fire in your head now. Right? Like you can't ignore them anymore. And I think
Right.
that's when I was like, yeah,
Right.
there's no way. I would not have been able to continue that way and be have a calm and healthy and happy life had I not gotten the assistance that I got. Right.
Right.
So, but I feel like it was necessary,
Yeah.
as crazy as it sounds.
And well, no, it doesn't sound crazy because I can identify with a lot of that because as women, like we tend to do it all, right? And especially if you're a single parent, if you're a
Yeah.
single parent, you have no choice but to take care of it and take care of everything because now, you're the sole one responsible. But as women, we tend to take on more. And I had this conversation with somebody else today because women are more empathetic. And so therefore, and we just tend to take on that. And then we tend to take on other things that we shouldn't because we feel that we should. And I grew up with a grandmother that said, no, you have to take care of your man and that's it. And, that's the way life has to be. And I'm just like, well, wait a minute. I think we should take care of each other. Um, and I think we wait to the last possible minute because number one, we're in denial about it. And number two, well, if we don't do it, who else is going to do it? But it's true. Like, um, I totally get that. And until our health is affected, a lot of us ignore the warning signs.
Yeah,
Um,
we do. It's because it's almost like you don't have time for that. Somebody told me this yesterday when I was telling them like, my daughter was not feeling well, blah blah. I was like, yeah, it's interesting because I was like, my whole house could get sick and I wouldn't get sick, and then he just made a joke, yeah, because you don't have time to get sick. I was like, yeah, you're right. I don't, because I can't afford it. But no, it's true. But something that you said reminded me too. So I came here as an immigrant, right? So I had to learn, how to be Canadian. Like I was 8 years old, 9 years old, I think, when I came here. And I also came from a culture that you get married and that's it, right? Like you get married and whatever the hell happens, that's your fate forever, right? Um, and that's another thing. I've been like this. My dad used to say I was rebellious because I was like, I just didn't. No, I didn't agree, right? And I mean, I'm not saying there's no like beauty and like longevity and beautiful relationships. I'm just saying if it's at a cost, if it's at a great cost for one person's happiness or one person's health, then it's like I wouldn't like I feel like I wouldn't sacrifice my entire life and purpose for that.
exactly.
But so it was the same thing. I remember when I wanted to end my relationship, my marriage, and my mom said the same thing to me, like, you have to stay. I was like, no. It's like I can't, right? But it's just I've always done things my way. But I do feel that had I really gotten more support, in my life, things would have turned out a little bit differently. Um, but I'm also really, it's crazy because when I say it should have happened or it was meant to happen, like, or, with the panic attacks and all that. Now that I feel like I'm healing from all of that. I can actually look back and even look like at my relationships and when I was leaving my marriage and, the 10-year gap and then my next relationship. Um, and the last almost 4 years and see the differences. I feel like I've lived different lives. Like it's hard. Like it's hard to even recognize who I was. I'm like I almost feel like that wasn't me, even if it was me, because the healed you or the healing you is so much different than the surviving you, the hidden survival mode you or the even like the mentally chaotic you or so when I look back, I'm like, I don't even recognize my own self, right? Um, I feel like now I'm a whole different person, even if I'm the same person. It's just I feel like all of those files that I'm addressing have opened the doors. That's what it was. I said they're opening the doors to the rooms that I haven't explored, and now I can go in there and see why this has been hurting me for so long because I can see it. It makes sense, right? I can clean it out now, right? I can start cleaning them out and
Clean
putting
them
them.
out and put the new tape in.
Yeah, rewiring my brain.
Rewiring.
Literally rewiring my brain. Yeah,
Yeah.
and It's been a journey. It's been a definite journey, but it's helped me not only for myself, but it's helped me also to help others. Um, I feel that we don't talk enough about neurodivergence, and also because there's two kinds, there's the acquired neurodivergence, and then which I feel is where mine comes from. I feel like it's been acquired for so long of not addressing certain things.
Mhm.
Um, but at the same time, it brings peace. But somebody told me recently it's also going to bring um, mourning, where you're like, because now that you are addressing everything, you realize, wow, like this is what you were supposed, what my life could have been like. This is what I could have felt like, for the last 20, 30 years. Now,
Right.
I personally don't like to live like that, but I mean, I definitely can see that that might be a feeling that would come up in many people when you finally start to heal from certain things, and you're like, wow, because you don't know. I think you're the one that said it earlier. You don't know what you don't know. You don't know what it's like to have peace within your mind if you haven't lived with it until you experience it,
Yeah.
right? And go ahead.
Exactly. No, exactly. And that's funny that you brought that up because right now I'm in the middle of doing a study called A Course in Miracles, and it talks about all about love
I
and
love
peace.
it. I love the
You're
Course in Miracles. Yes, I did it.
and there was every morning I have what's called like a clearing call with
Hmm.
a bunch of people, and so in I was at a state of such peace, which really I hadn't even really identified that that's what living this life was like I said, I grew up in chaos my entire childhood. My adulthood has been total chaos. Um, and so I'm learning to switch that mindset though. And there can be chaos all around us, but that doesn't mean you have to live in chaos.
Yes.
If you bring yourself to peace and to center, no matter what's around you, because life is always going to throw shit at you, you could still live in a state of peace within the chaos. And I found the first time I really like, wow, this is actually happening was when my dad was dying. And for those 9 days, we were beside his bedside. And I'm like, the old me would have been freaking out because my dad was my hero. My dad was my everything. He was the only man in the entire world that never judged me or belittled me about anything and listened to me. And so in those 9 days, I was just like, I was so calm. I was just like, what the hell is this? I would say to my friends, like, what is this? Because I don't know what had ever felt like. So that was like a year and a half ago. And I was just like, okay. And so, you catch those glimpses of peace and it can be different and different experiences for everything. And I noticed that as soon as I find myself going back to the old me, the old, oh, this is just crap. This is whatever. I always bring myself back to peace and to center and to love because, like, especially the Course of Miracles is nothing but,
Yeah.
living in love.
Yeah.
Your main function is love basically.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, finding that within it and always having that life of chaos is just like, wow, this is something else.
It is. Always having life of chaos really prevents you from even connecting
Hmm.
to like the love that we need, because you're always in self-protection mode without
Hmm.
realizing it. You're always in fight or flight. You're always in self-protection. You can't, exhale.
Hmm.
Like there's always something that you're on guard about.
Yeah.
And that's not conducive to living in this peaceful,
Yeah.
because you can't.
No.
You can't. You're in battle, literally.
It's like survivor mode.
Yeah.
And now I'm going into thrive mode. So I've lived by the chaos and the survive mode too long, and now we're back. Now we're into the okay. No, now we're in the thriving, but allowing yourself to receive that can sometimes be very difficult, especially if you've been in your head for decades.
Yeah.
So, but allowing yourself to receive that goodness and that peace and that and living in a state of thriving.
Yeah. Um, so I've had a lot of really amazing teachers throughout my life. And I feel like the things that they have taught me that maybe at the time I didn't really understand how to do it because, or how to really understand it, or the purpose of them, I can look at now and be like, it's all just all it makes all the sense in the world, right?
Yeah.
So one of the things was that little girl in my instance inside me, right? That was helpless to the things that were happening, and that had no voice and wasn't able to do anything about it, because how can a 4-year-old 5-year-old do anything about what's going on, right?
Right.
um you know it's in there still, right? She hasn't you haven't she's still in there. And so sometimes when we have, like, when we have PTSD or things that, like, we get stuck in certain emotional memories, right?
Mhm.
And then when something similar happens now, she comes through, like that unresolved emotion of your 5-year-old self is still in there, right? And I started really really paying attention to that, because um, I remember when in a relationship, I'm not going to say which, but there was something that really scared me that my dad would do when he was drinking.
Mhm.
And the fear in my stomach that I felt literally brought me back to when I was 4 years old. I remember, like, exactly. And so, like, when I'm like, yes, she's definitely still in there, and this fear is still in there, I was like, and I cannot ever, like, let any of my kids feel this, right?
Mhm.
Because, and that's what scared me even the most, right?
Right.
So I say all that to say that recently I when I remember what she said to me about healing your little girl inside, just you have to validate yourself at all the ages and stages that you never were validated, and you never were given that assistance and that support and that love that you needed, because you're still in there wounded as a, in there, like, there's all of these memories from your childhood, and like those core memories, like the feeling that you have about what was happening is still there, and you're still feeling unsupported, right? Um so I've been recognizing that, talking to myself. I wrote a letter. I shared some of it, not the entire thing, but I shared some of it in a letter to my 4-year-old self a couple days ago on my page. It was the most emotional exercise I've done for,
Yeah.
like, I was literally, like, bawling my eyes out, and I'm not a crier. Anybody will tell you, they probably hardly anybody has seen me cry. But literally, like, writing this letter to myself as 4-year-old me, remembering everything and just validating her, saying, this was so touching and connecting, right?
Yeah.
Just to remind me that I validate and I recognize and I remember, and that it's okay now. It's
Mhm.
let's clean that part out now and just move forward. Like, you don't have to be afraid now. Like, I love me, and I didn't really know what that was like, because my life was so chaotic. I didn't learn how to do that,
Right.
right? So I was always, when I was a teenager, I was always seeking love elsewhere, always seeking love elsewhere.
Mhm.
It never turned out well, but I had to learn how to love me first, right?
Right.
So yeah,
I love that you said that because it's so true. Those of us that have been love deprived, I guess is the word, are the ones that want to seek it the most, and we find it in all the wrong places. I can identify with that.
yeah,
Prior relationships, I'm like, what the hell was I thinking? And I
yeah,
wasn't, obviously. And now that I have a great guy, and have healed a lot prior to meeting him, and then still on the healing journey as I'm with him. And that's funny because as women, we see this, and guys are not quick to say, okay, well, I have a problem too. But it's in when you're, I just had a conversation with a woman named Inez yesterday, and she said, men that are healed are sexy. So, and I'm like, well, that goes for women too. So if the men out there that are listening to this and you have identified with anything that we have said today, it's okay to have those feelings and get the help that you need to so that you too can be healed, because healing is sexy. If I don't know about you, but in in the past, like, things would I would fly off at the littlest things, and now that I don't do that, my partner really appreciates that. And so, happy house, happy spouse, or happy spouse, happy house is what I say. But
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I mean, healing really just helps. I feel like it helps you connect, right?
Mhm.
You can't really connect without it. I'm not saying, and I also talk about this in my work where I say you don't have to necessarily be healed to be successful. You can be in the healing process. You don't have to wait until that's like one thing that I do throw in there because this whole time I haven't been, you know, healed. I've been in a
Mhm.
healing journey, but I've still been able to do things that are, progressively growing and doing great.
Right.
Um, you don't have to wait, is what I'm saying, to go
Exactly.
after your dreams and things like that. But the difference in you, your work ethic, your coping mechanisms, your communication skills, like even your innovation, the way that you create, it's night and day
Mhm.
when you don't have all the clutter, when you don't have all of that inside. And most of it is subconscious. Like
Mhm.
I don't know many people, unless it's something that they're still consciously hurting from, that walk around thinking about the specifics all the time. You don't. I did not walk around, oh, this is what happened when I was 4. This is what happened when I was 5. Like I didn't. That was not part of my brain process, right? It
Right.
was just, but that was the core.
Yeah.
That's where all of these things came from that I hadn't dealt with, that became a condition that grew because I ignored it because I was
Yeah.
like, no, no, I'm fine. Life is fine. Life is great. Everything's great. Like, and it just kept growing and growing and growing till they were like, we're still here. We can't ignore us anymore. We're gonna show you why, right? Till
Right.
I actually started addressing it. So, and then the more I address it, the more I see that everything else is better.
Yeah.
Everything else is better. Um, oh, you know what else I didn't even touch on really quickly? You know what else I noticed throughout this whole journey? It also affected my relationship with food. My relationship with food was horrible.
Right.
Um, I became stuck in diet culture.
Yeah.
Every time I wanted to lose weight, I had to join something. Right? Instead of, but that was, and then I feel like I developed like eating disorders, and body dysmorphia. I look at pictures from even when I was a teenager, 18 years old. I may have been like 113 pounds, but I thought I was fat, like
Yeah.
it's, there's just the way that I saw myself, the way that I just everything, catapulted from everything
Right.
that I didn't deal with. Right. So even
Right.
that I'm addressing consciously now.
Right.
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 So,
I love that you said that. Actually, as you were talking, I was getting visions. Sometimes God does that to me, but I was getting visions that, so we're here. Our 4-year-old self is over here. Our 40, well, I'll speak for myself. I'm 46. So my 46-year-old self is over here. And in the middle is all the shit that we impacted over the years. And as we heal, it keeps going like less and less and less. So eventually, there's nothing in between. And that helps with our relationships, that
mhm.
helps with our work ethic, like you said. The more shit that we clear out, the better, the clearer we are. And as those of us like yourself and I that have lived in our heads for decades, when that noise goes away, we can be in tune with the things that we need to hear from. So I love that. Was just the vision that I got, just cleaning that out. And you're right, food addiction, I'm right there with you. It didn't take me, it took me decades to get to this way, and it's not going to come off overnight. And on that healing journey of that, and for myself, I think 24 pounds have been gone. So, yeah, so
Yay.
keep
Awesome.
on
Yeah, me
going.
too. I kept mine off since last year too, so I'm good. But I'm just really mindful of what I am doing rather than, okay, let me just do this now and then come off that and then do that next and then come off that because I've been doing that for years, right?
Right.
So, I mean, I think now it's mainly to do with everything that I've overcome when it comes to um,
Mhm.
my health, all the way, my holistic health, not just my physical health, not just my emotional health, my mental health as well, my
Mhm.
spiritual health. Um, and I think one of the best things that I have overcome is I'm talking about it. I'm not hiding
Yeah.
it anymore, and that's probably been one of the most healing things ever,
Yeah.
because it's like the more I talk about it, the more I validate it for me. But
Mhm.
I feel like it probably helps other people to be like, hey,
Yeah.
I'm dealing with it too, because that's how I felt when I heard other people talk about it. I'm like, me too. Like, I totally get it,
Yeah.
but you too, like, people wouldn't, if they didn't say it, you wouldn't know it. And I feel like your story gives voice and validation to people that aren't there yet. Right. And
Yeah.
I wasn't there for a long time, and you know what? It made me feel very inauthentic sometimes. I
Mhm.
don't have a perfect life. I don't have, like, if everybody's thinking, oh, you're this. And yes, I have done those things, but I've also struggled with ABC, right? And I
Right.
also have things that I have gotten help with, and um, everybody should feel open to do the same, right?
Exactly.
So,
And I think the best people that you're helping is within your own family too. Because by you being that person, your girls are going to say, "Hey, wait a minute. You know, I I'm not I don't want to go through that." And you are helping them along the way by healing yourself to heal your generations.
yeah,
Which is important. I believe. Because that's the legacy you're living. The legacy of healing, not the legacy of trauma.
yes, yes. And they say that everything we do in your generation will affect the next 7 generations.
Mhm.
I totally believe it. And I totally believe it, and that's why I'm like, it's not just for me.
That's
It's
right.
This is going to, it's going to create a whole different succession of events. And you have literally that power. You can change the trajectory of and everything that comes after you just by what you do today. And helping yourself will change everything around you. It really will.
Yeah. I love that. So this last couple minutes, we usually do the fundamentals, and normally Kimberly joins us, but she's not here today. And so if you've ever watched the show before, the fundamentals are: what are three things that you live by, like your core, uh, I don't know if beliefs is the right word, but if you were to leave the planet today, what are the three things that you want people to have known you by?
I My biggest thing I would say is my perseverance. This is something that no matter what, keep going. No matter what, I kept going. No matter what, I'm going to keep going. No matter what, I'm going to keep building. Um, my gratitude. I say I'm thankful probably like 25 hours in a day. And that's no joke. Like, I am thankful all the time. And it keeps me so grounded in the present. I mean, of course, like I said earlier, I might be flighty with my mind sometimes, but
Right.
that's what brings me back. I say thank you. I say thanks all the time, right? And
Mm.
um, perseverance, gratitude, and love. Um,
Love it.
I like mastery of like the mastery of love. It's one of my favorite books, but I literally feel that that is our purpose on earth,
Mhm.
is to learn love and to be love.
Right.
That is something that I feel is so far detached. And love is not just romantic relationships. Like, that
Mhm.
is not just what love is about. It's just
Right.
the energy of the earth and the
Right.
energy that's within us and the energy of God. That is the point of everything that we're supposed to be doing.
Right.
And that is the point of everything that I'm doing. Like,
Right.
that's literally the point. And it starts with you within yourself.
Right.
Mhm.
That is beautiful. And thank you so much for sharing that. Thank you so much for sharing your story today, Victoria. It's been a pleasure to have you here today, and for you to be able to share, um, what God has put on your heart to share. Your healing journey. You're doing amazing things. And for those people that want to get a hold of you, to maybe check out some of your business and that, what's the best place for them to reach you?
So I'm online, Victoria Rubio. My handle is at Success Path Coach, and that's for Instagram and Facebook. And also just Victoria Rubio. I'm like my other business is everywhere, but it's like if for my story and the things that I do and basically everything that we talked about in this show, it's all under my coaching pages and my personal page. I'm very open. I love talking to people about their story. So anybody wants to chat with me and everything, like I'd love it. So Success Path Coach or Victoria Rubio.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And I want to thank our sponsor today, Be Oily with Bonnie. For all your essential oil needs, go to www.beoilywithbonnie.com or give her a call or text at 810-414-0929. Again, thank you so much, Victoria, for sharing your story with us today. Don't forget, guys, be unstoppable, all that you do, and go to our YouTube channel, Unstoppable Overcomers. Like and subscribe today. Share it with your friends, because this is nothing but positive outlooks here, and we all need more positivity. So with that, we'll see you same time